It started with the mug. Not just any mug, her mug. Matte black, chipped near the base, with Boss Lady printed in fading gold cursive across the front. It had always been her sacred object, a daily ritual. Every morning without fail, she'd fill it with black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and sip it in silence before speaking to anyone. And on Thursdays, like clockwork, she left for yoga at 6 a.m., took a class 2 towns over, and wouldn't be back until close to 10. She was militant about it. So when I walked into the kitchen at 6:40, still half-dazed, and saw that mug in the drying rack, clean, wet, recently rinsed, I didn't feel confusion. I felt nothing. Just a low, quiet vacuum opening up behind my ribs. Something wasn't adding up, and my body recognized it before my brain did. She hadn't used that mug this morning. She wasn't supposed to be here. And yet there it was, freshly washed, like someone had used it and then carefully put it away, trying to erase a presence they didn't want noticed. I didn't call her. Didn't text. I walked back to the bedroom, slow, controlled. Her side of the bed was untouched. Not unmade, untouched. Pillows still fluffed, comforters still taut. I opened the closet and ran my fingers across her side. One pair of leggings missing. No gym bag. Her black Nike trainers weren't lined up by the door where she always kept them after a workout. At first, I told myself she probably left earlier than usual. Maybe she had coffee at home, realized she was early, and left again. Maybe. But something was off. Too off. She was the kind of person who liked patterns. Same route to work. Same brand of almond milk. She folded her underwear. When something deviated in her world, it was usually for a reason. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. They were shaking, just a little. Not from fear. From clarity. You know when you suddenly realize a song you've loved for years has lyrics that never made sense? That sensation of something long familiar turning foreign. That's what it felt like. Like the story I thought I was living had shifted 1 degree, and now everything was out of tune. I didn't make a scene. Didn't go hunting through drawers or start sniffing sheets like some desperate soap opera husband. I just waited. Sometimes silence tells you more than words ever could. She got back at 9:42. I heard her keys in the door, the muted jangle. She walked in humming. That humming. God, I hadn't heard her hum in months. She was in high spirits, almost buoyant. That, more than anything, confirmed it. Something had changed. She didn't see me at first. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and pulled her hair up into a loose bun with that casual grace she always had. Then she looked up and saw me sitting on the armrest of the couch. She startled slightly, just a flicker, and smiled too quickly. "You're up early," she said, setting her phone face down on the console table. "Always face down lately." "Yeah," I said. "Figured I'd make us some breakfast." She tilted her head and gave me that tight little grin, the one she used when she was buying time. "Ah, that's sweet," she said, walking past me toward the kitchen. She didn't ask why I was up early. Didn't comment on the coffee. I waited until she pulled open the fridge door before I asked, "Did you drink coffee this morning?" She paused, just for a second. Then she turned, blinked, and said, "No, why?" I shrugged. "Your mug was wet." "Oh, right. I guess I rinsed it out yesterday and forgot." "You forgot." She gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Yeah, you know how I am." But I did know. That was the problem. She cooked eggs, talked about her class, said Melissa had been acting weird lately. I nodded, asked questions, played my part. But in the back of my head, something kept looping. If she was at yoga, and she didn't drink coffee this morning, why was her mug freshly rinsed after I got up? She never left it out. Never washed it in the evening. And the water droplets on the bottom told me it hadn't been sitting long. Someone used it. Recently. Either she never left, or she came back before her usual time. Either way, it meant something had been rearranged. And not for my benefit. Later that day, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. I didn't unlock it. Didn't need to. A notification was still on the screen. A text preview from a number saved under a fake name. "Was hard seeing you leave again. Can't wait for the weekend." My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't clench. I just stared at it like a riddle that had solved itself. The fracture wasn't loud. There was no explosion. Just a quiet, clean snap inside me. Something broke, and in that silence, I realized I was already gone. All that remained was the performance, the mask, and the beginning of something far colder, far more methodical than anything she could ever imagine. Our life, From the outside, probably looked enviable. The kind of stability people confuse with happiness. We had a nice two-story place in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where people mow their lawns in parallel, where the mailman knows your dog's name. Weeknights were a rotation of takeout and half-watched Netflix shows. Weekends were grocery runs, home projects, brunch with her friends, who had slowly become our friends. Everything felt stable, predictable, maybe even too predictable, but I saw that as a good thing. I thought it meant we were solid, mature, past the drama phase that breaks other couples. She'd call me her rock. Said she admired my calm, the way I never raised my voice, never made a scene. I took pride in that. I thought it meant she felt safe. But now I realize it just meant I was easy to lie to. The first shift was so small it didn't register at first. She started going to more networking events. That's what she called them. She said they were casual, nothing formal, just mixers for her to meet other professionals in the wellness space. She was trying to start her own coaching brand, life alignment, energy clarity, some kind of blend between fitness and mindfulness that I never quite understood but always supported. I'd help with her logo design, take photos for her social media, even helped build her website. At first, these events happened once a month, then bi-weekly, then 3 times in 1 week. I didn't question it. I believed in her, and I believed that believing in someone meant giving them space when they asked for it. Then there were the personal retreats. That's how she framed them. Long weekends where she'd go off with a few of her clients, usually women, she claimed, to some remote cabin or lake house to disconnect from distractions and realign. I'd help pack her bags. I'd make sure she had snacks, gas in the car, a fully charged power bank. I'd hug her before she left and tell her I was proud of her. And she'd kiss me soft, sweet, but distant. Her eyes didn't close when she kissed me anymore. I noticed that, but I didn't let myself think about it too hard. I chalked it up to stress. The pressure of running a business. The emotional toll of being there for other people. But the distance grew. She started using phrases that felt like they came from a podcast. I just need more emotional space. I'm on a self-evolution journey right now. You don't need to fix everything for me. She'd say these things while smiling, like she was teaching me something, not rejecting me. She'd talk about boundaries, but never the kind you work on together. Always ones that push me further away. She said she needed more time alone, more silence, more freedom to grow. And I gave it to her, because I thought that's what love was, letting someone become their best self, even if that self didn't always include you. The silences at dinner grew longer. Not angry silences, just empty ones. She stopped asking about my day. If I brought something up, she'd nod, give me a vague, "That's interesting," then change the subject. Her phone was always nearby, and she started turning it over every time she got a notification. I asked once who she was texting so late, and she laughed and said, "Wow, okay, jealous much?" It was meant to be a joke, but there was a sharpness under it. Like she was daring me to dig deeper. Her wardrobe changed, too. Not drastically, just enough to feel curated. Suddenly she had new leggings, sleek shoes, different perfumes. Expensive ones, the kind she used to scoff at. I didn't question it, not directly. But I noticed when a new jacket appeared that I'd never seen before. She said she bought it on sale. No tags, no receipt, no packaging. It just showed up. Same with a pendant she started wearing, a small silver charm that she always tucked under her shirt, like it was a secret. One night, I found a second toothbrush in her car's glove compartment while looking for insurance papers. She said it belonged to a client who left it during a retreat. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Her Instagram went private. She said it was to protect her client's privacy. She created a second account for her coaching business, one I could follow. The original one, the one with our photos, our trips, our inside jokes, stayed locked. She stopped tagging me in things. Stopped posting us all together. I became invisible to her online world. But when I asked, she smiled and said, "I just want to keep some parts of my life sacred." And yet, she still smiled. Still laughed at my dumb jokes. Still lay next to me at night, though she always faced away. It was like living with a stranger who wore my wife's skin. The familiar routines remained, her making tea at night, curling up on the couch, scrolling her phone with a half smile. But none of it included me anymore. She was there, but she wasn't with me. Not really. I kept waiting for her to come back. For her to snap out of whatever phase this was. I thought maybe she was just going through something. A spiritual detour. I told myself to be patient. To trust her. To believe that what we had was stronger than whatever this was. I wanted to believe it because the alternative, that she was lying, that she had been drifting with intent, was too much. So I stayed quiet. I didn't accuse. I didn't confront. I just waited and watched, because part of me already knew the truth. And once you see the cracks, it's only a matter of time before the whole illusion starts to collapse. It was a Tuesday, the kind of forgettable day that only becomes memorable when your entire life snaps in half. She said she had a client call that evening, one of her long-distance coaching sessions with a woman from out of state who was going through a major breakthrough. She needed full privacy, she said, and asked me not to be in the room. I nodded. I was used to her setting boundaries that didn't include me. So I poured a drink, grabbed my laptop, and retreated to the back porch, pretending I had work emails to sort through. But I didn't open a single tab. I just sat there, listening through the cracked sliding door, hearing the gentle creak of the floorboards as she paced inside the living room. Her voice came through soft at first, too low to catch the words. Then a pause. Then laughter. Not just any laugh, that laugh. The one she used to give me. The full-body one, where her breath catches and she leans forward like she's offering herself to the moment. She hadn't laughed like that with me in months. I stayed still, watching the glass tremble in my hand. Then she said it. Soft, playful, so casual it almost floated by. You always say that to me. Another pause. No, you are. I mean it. I swear. If I could just have one weekend without distractions, she stopped. A chuckle. Yeah, well, he's still here. You know how it is. Her voice lowered again, almost a whisper. I hate sneaking around. But you're the only thing that feels real lately. That was it. No screaming. No slamming doors. No righteous confrontation. Just stillness. Something went cold behind my eyes. I stood up slowly, stepped inside, and walked past the hallway without making a sound. I didn't interrupt her call. Didn't bang on the door. I went to the kitchen, placed my glass in the sink, and stared out the window, as if watching the wind blow through the trees could somehow hold back the tide rising inside me. Every second of her voice behind me carved a little deeper. Her tone, her inflection, the pauses filled with that slow-burn intimacy. None of it belonged to me anymore. I wasn't her safe place. I was the obstacle. She ended the call 20 minutes later. I heard the rustle of her yoga mat being rolled up, the soft click of her phone as she powered it down, or thought she did. She walked into the kitchen with that same neutral smile, the one she used when she was trying to act normal. How was your work stuff? She asked, pouring herself water, not even looking at me. Busy, I said. Lots of moving parts. She nodded like she cared, like she wasn't dripping with someone else's attention. I watched her sip, her lips touching the rim of the glass like nothing was wrong, like her words hadn't just poisoned everything between us. That night, while she slept, I got her phone. She always changed the passcode every few months, but I'd seen it once reflected in the microwave glass. 9264, her birth date flipped. She used to joke she was predictable. She had no idea how true that was. I opened the messaging app. The contact name was saved as Trinity, with a pink heart. But the messages weren't from a woman. The photos weren't, either. Hotel receipts. Voice notes. Miss you already. Can't wait to see you again. He doesn't deserve you. That one landed like a blade. The last message? Sent just before her coaching call. Same time next Thursday? Her reply? Always. I didn't cry. Didn't shake. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her as she slept. Her face was relaxed. Peaceful. She didn't know the war had already started. She didn't know I was done being her quiet foundation, her reliable fallback. She had no idea what she'd activated. She thought I'd fall apart. Beg. Blame myself. She didn't know who I really was. Not yet. The next morning, I made her breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, the works. She smiled sleepily and kissed my cheek. You're spoiling me, she said. I smiled back. You deserve it. And she believed me. She thought I was still hers. That the illusion was intact. But she didn't see the way I studied her, the way I cataloged every lie she told with those soft eyes and that fake gratitude. I let her eat. I let her laugh. I let her believe nothing had changed. Because when you're planning a clean execution, the last thing you want is a panic target. The man she betrayed had died the night before, quietly, in the dark, alone with his discovery. The man sitting at that breakfast table was someone else. Someone patient. Someone watching. Someone already moving pieces she didn't even know existed. Let her think she still held the narrative. Let her believe her secrets were safe. I wouldn't confront. I wouldn't accuse. I would let her live in her perfect little performance until the curtain dropped, and I was the one holding the final line. The day after I read the messages, I stopped reacting and started listening. Every word she said became a data point, every movement a pattern. I didn't ask where she was going. I let her volunteer the lie. I started making mental timestamps. If she left at 6:10 claiming a client session across town, I'd mark it. If she returned at 9:07 with her hair inexplicably damp but no gym bag in sight, I filed it away. I didn't try to catch her in a single explosive moment. I wanted the full picture, the rot beneath the surface, not just the visible crack. The first trap I set was digital. I created a fake fitness account on Instagram. Male. Attractive. Spiritual-sounding bio. I followed her new business profile and started reacting to her stories, just enough to land on her radar. 3 days later, she followed back. Within a week, she liked 2 photos. I didn't message. Didn't need to. I wanted to see how quickly she opened the door. While she built her brand on trust and alignment, I built a persona tailored to her ego. Just enough attention to make her curious, just enough mystery to keep her engaged. Meanwhile, I called in a favor. My cousin, Ben, works in logistics, manages deliveries and routes for half the city. I told him I needed a package sent at a very specific time. No explanation, just trust. At 11:45 a.m. on a Thursday, a bouquet of flowers with a made-up sender name was delivered to her supposed client's office. She had told me she'd be there from 11 to 2. The receptionist, confused, called the number on the card, which was mine. I thanked her for confirming. I already knew the answer, but now I had proof. That same day, I checked our bank history, something she assumed I never bothered with. 2 charges stood out. One from a boutique hotel downtown. The name wasn't obvious. It was under a parent company, but I traced it. She had paid for a weekend stay, one of the same weekends she'd claimed to be at a lakeside retreat for female clients. The second charge was for a men's bracelet from a designer store. Not my size. Not my style. Not for me. I didn't confront her. I simply copied the statement, saved the receipt, and deleted the notification. She'd never know I saw it. She thought her deceit was subtle, that draping it in the language of self-care and independence made it noble. But I wasn't looking for morality. I was documenting behavior. A week later, I texted her best friend, Casey. Nothing confrontational. Just a casual invite to a group dinner I was planning. Casey was caught off guard. Said she thought we were out of town that weekend. I played dumb. Oh, she didn't mention a trip. There was a pause, 3 dots dancing for nearly a minute. Then, shit. Sorry. Forget I said anything. I didn't follow up. I didn't need to. Casey had just confirmed there was a plan I wasn't part of. The cracks were turning into caverns. One night, as she prepped for another overnight session, I asked about her client's name. Just a passing comment. She hesitated, blinked, then said Melissa. 2 days later, I looked up Melissa's business site, one she proudly linked on her professional page. She'd been speaking at a conference in Oregon that weekend. I cross-checked her Instagram. Sure enough, tagged at an airport, photos with panels. She hadn't seen my wife in over a month. Another lie. Another layer peeled back. I didn't accuse. I made her breakfast. I helped load her car. I kissed her on the cheek and said, "Good luck with Melissa." She smiled and said, "Thanks, babe. I'll tell her you said hi." I nodded. Logged the lie. She had no idea the walls were closing in. My silence wasn't ignorance. It was insulation. She still thought I was asleep in the passenger seat of this marriage while she veered us off the cliff. But I wasn't sleeping. I was unbuckling, waiting for the right moment to jump and let her crash alone. I started laying psychological traps. I'd ask vague questions, then wait for her to fill in the blanks. "You looked tired when you got in. Long night." I'd say. She'd blink, recalibrate, then say something like, "Oh yeah, Melissa had a breakdown. We talked for hours." I'd smile, nod, jot down the new lie. I never gave her a reason to suspect I knew. I let her think she was clever. Let her think she was playing chess. But I had the board memorized, and every move she made was one I'd already rehearsed. I wasn't trying to salvage anything now. I was cataloging every betrayal, building the foundation for something far more devastating than confrontation. I wanted her to walk further into the maze, to believe she'd gotten away with it, to feel safe in her deception, because only then would the fall shatter her completely. She thought she was lying to a man who couldn't bear the truth. She had no idea she was confessing piece by piece to a man already writing her ending. It happened at her networking brunch. One of those curated social events she was so proud of, renting out half a rooftop lounge downtown, surrounded by self-proclaimed coaches, influencers, and startup founders who wore sunglasses indoors and spoke in buzzwords. I arrived late, as planned, in a tailored charcoal suit she hadn't seen before. I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't supposed to be there. But I walked in like I owned the building. No one stopped me, they assumed I belonged. That was the trick. Blend in, not confront. Not yet. She was across the room, laughing too hard at something the man next to her said. He was tall, younger than me, wearing a blazer that didn't fit and confidence that didn't match his eyes. Her hand rested lightly on his forearm, and when she looked at him, she tilted her head in that intimate way I remembered. It was how she used to look at me. My cue was at 1 p.m. exactly. The projector near the bar, previously displaying her coaching logo and testimonials, flickered. A short slideshow began, 5 photos. That was all I needed. The first was blurry, from a distance, her and the same man exiting a hotel 3 towns over. The second, them in the parking lot, kissing behind a pillar. The third, her in the passenger seat of his car, holding his hand. The fourth, a screenshot of the fake Instagram persona she flirted with, my creation. The fifth, the kicker, a message from her to him, dated 2 days ago, timestamped during our date night, reading, "I wish I was with you instead." The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone gasped. She turned around slowly, eyes wide, trying to understand what she was seeing. Then she saw me, standing by the bar, arms crossed, watching. Her mouth opened slightly. Panic flickered across her face like a storm cloud trying to outrun lightning. She took one shaky step forward and said, "What is this?" I didn't answer. She looked around, eyes darting, hunting for some angle. "This isn't real," she said louder. "You edited this." Her voice was cracking already. The man beside her took a step back, instinctively putting distance between them. I didn't move. She tried again, this time softer. "It's not what it looks like." She caught herself, realizing the photos made lying impossible. She pivoted. "Okay, fine. We got close. But you were never there for me. You were always so cold." Her eyes darted to the crowd, then back to me. "You pulled away first. You stopped caring. What was I supposed to do? Just wait for you to notice me again?" I remained still. Let her unravel. She stepped forward again, more desperate. "It was a mistake, okay?" I was confused. He meant nothing. He was just someone to talk to. I never planned for this to happen. Her voice cracked again. I said nothing. Her face hardened, shifting gears like a malfunctioning machine. "You know what? Maybe this is your fault," she said, louder, voice trembling. "You made everything so robotic. Always analyzing, never feeling. You never saw me. I had to fight just to feel alive again." A few of her friends backed away. The man she was with was now pretending he'd never met her. And then, as if trying to reclaim control, she laughed. Laughed like the room wasn't crumbling around her. "Wow," she said, mocking now, "you went full psycho for this? Is this supposed to make you look strong? You look pathetic. Obsessed. Do you really think anyone here respects this kind of stunt?" I let the silence breathe. Let her choke on her own spiral. Then I walked forward, slowly, until I stood 2 feet from her. I looked her in the eyes, not with hate, not with pity, but with the detachment of a man who no longer saw a person, just the residue of someone he once loved. And I said, calmly, quietly, but loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "You didn't lose me to another woman. You lost me to the man you convinced me to stop being." Her face crumpled in stages. It started with her eyes, then her lips. Then her shoulders sagged like a structure folding under pressure. The smirk vanished. The false confidence evaporated. She looked around the room and realized no one was laughing. No one was on her side. Her network, her tribe, her audience, all reduced to spectators in her public undoing. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Just a stammer and a quiet breath. I didn't walk away. Not yet. I wanted her to stand in it. Feel it. I watched as the weight of what she'd done, and how deeply she'd underestimated me, settled on her chest like a tombstone. The moment hung there, thick and unforgiving, suspended in a silence she couldn't talk her way out of. She showed up 2 days later. No call. No warning. Just the sound of tires on gravel and the sharp knock of knuckles against the door like nothing had happened. I opened it. She stood there, makeup smudged, hair pulled back in a way she thought made her look humble, but I could see the desperation in the set of her jaw. "Can we talk?" she asked, already pushing past me like she still had a place in this house. I let her walk in, watched her scan the room like she expected everything to still feel familiar. She turned to face me, arms crossed tightly. "You ambushed me," she said, voice trembling with that strange mix of hurt and entitlement. "In front of everyone. You humiliated me." I didn't answer, just looked at her. She took a step forward. "What kind of man does that? What kind of husband does that?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I let the silence breathe. She needed it more than I did. "You always needed everything to be perfect," she spat, tone turning sharp. "Everything under control. You think that's strength? No. That's insecurity. You smothered me." I blinked once. "You lied." She flinched. "Just slightly." "I had to," she snapped. "You never listened. You never saw me. I was lonely." I tilted my head, calm. "So you sleeping someone else because I didn't clap when you talked?" Her mouth fell open for a second, then slammed shut. "You were boring," she hissed. "You were always just there. Predictable. Safe. You think women want safe." She waited for a reaction. I gave her none. "You don't get it," she continued, pacing now, unspooling faster than she could think. "He made me feel alive. Wanted. You never touch me like that anymore. You stopped trying." I folded my arms. "So your solution was to open your legs for someone dumber than you?" Her face twisted. "You think you're so perfect," she said, her voice starting to shake. "Like you're above this. But you're not. You drove me to it. You were always cold. Dead inside. This whole thing? It's your fault too." I took a slow step toward her. My voice was low, even. "I gave you loyalty. You gave me theater." She tried to laugh. It came out jagged. "Oh, so now you're the victim," she snapped. "You think this is all one-sided? That you were some perfect man who did everything right?" I raised an eyebrow. "No. I think I was a man who trusted the wrong woman. And now I'm not." Her mouth opened again, but the words weren't coming as fast now. The rhythm was breaking. "I made a mistake," she said suddenly, voice softening. "Okay. But we were disconnected before that. You know we were." I didn't respond. Just watched her unravel. "Say something," she whispered, stepping closer. "Anything." I stared at her for a long moment, then finally said, "You don't deserve anything." That was when the mask cracked. She threw up her arms, stormed into the kitchen, backtracked, paced like a trapped animal. "So that's it? You just shut down and act like you're better than me." I gave her nothing. She needed the noise. I didn't. "You won't even fight for us," she said, louder now, voice shaking with something that wasn't rage anymore. It was fear. "You're just gonna let everything die? After all these years?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "You killed it. I'm just burying it." Her breath caught. "You're a robot," she snapped. "No wonder I had to find someone else to feel something." I shrugged. "Enjoy him, then. I'm sure he'll love the version of you pretend to be." That one hit. She stood still for a second too long. Eyes glossy, jaw clenched, fists tight at her sides. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "You can't. You loved me." I nodded slowly. "I did. And then I saw who you really are." She stepped closer again, voice shaking now, cracking like ice under strain. "We can fix this. Please. We can go to counseling. We can talk to someone. I can end it. I will. Just don't give up on us." Her eyes were wet now, but not with guilt. With fear. Real, unfiltered fear. Not of being alone, but of becoming irrelevant to me. And I gave her the one thing she couldn't handle. I smiled. A small, detached, almost pitying smile. "You're not mine to fix anymore." She collapsed onto the couch like her bones gave out. Whispered something I couldn't hear. Maybe a prayer. Maybe a curse. I didn't care. She had thrown every weapon she had: guilt, rage, seduction, pity. None of them landed. None of them mattered. The power was gone. She felt it. I saw it. And in that silence, she realized the most terrifying truth of all. I wasn't angry. I wasn't grieving. I was already gone. She thought silence meant hesitation, that because I wasn't screaming or sobbing or chasing her down with questions, I was still deciding what to do. That was her first mistake. In truth, I had already begun dismantling her world the night she left my house in tears. I let her believe she had space, that there was still room for reconciliation, but behind that illusion, I moved with surgical precision. I started by backing up every message, photo, and transaction, 3 copies, offline and secure. Her affair wasn't just emotional. It was logistical, funded by our joint account. I traced every transaction. gas near hotels she claimed not to visit, Airbnb charges under unfamiliar names, boutique stores she swore were gifts for clients. I printed everything, annotated each one like a case file, assembled it into a timeline so clean and damning it looked like a prosecutor's dream. Then I began closing doors. Quietly. Our shared bank accounts, transferred my portion to a private account, and locked her access. The joint credit card? Cancelled. I knew she used it for recurring charges, subscriptions, automated bills, her Canva Pro, her domain, even her fitness app. All of it cut off. The Netflix account? I changed the password, logged her out of every device, just for the pleasure of hearing her whine about it later. The car? Leased under my name. I drove it to the dealership and traded it in before she noticed. Her name was never on the papers. Let her boyfriend pick her up now. The utilities? Also under my name. I scheduled everything for shutoff at the end of the month. She'd receive no warning. One night, the lights would simply go out. Meanwhile, I spoke to a divorce attorney, not one of those billboard hacks she could twist against me, but a quiet, highly competent woman recommended by a corporate client of mine. I came in with my binder of evidence, explained everything without bitterness, and asked for a plan that would leave my ex financially bleeding without dragging me into drama. She smiled when I showed her the receipts. Said, "Oh, we can gut her cleanly." I told her I wanted everything done behind the curtain. Filed discreetly. Served on a day she'd never expect. So we chose her birthday. I crafted my public image with care. I told mutual friends we were separating amicably, that we'd simply grown apart. I wanted her to hear that and feel safe, feel in control. But behind that, I was planting seeds. I sent a curated package of evidence, screenshots, dates, soft explanations, to her closest friends. Not angry, not vengeful, just calm disclosures. I wanted you to hear it from me, not through the rumor mill. This is what really happened. No exaggeration, just truth. Her inner circle started peeling away, not in a dramatic walkout, but in quiet, slow disconnection. She called Casey one night and got sent to voicemail. Another friend left her on read. She still didn't realize it was me, pruning her world, trimming the branches until she was standing alone. Then came the professional play. I knew her brand image mattered, her coaching identity, her wellness journey, built on authenticity and empowerment. So I built a case file for her sponsors. Not public, private emails. I reached out to 2 companies she partnered with, both of which had integrity clauses buried in their contracts. I didn't accuse. I simply attached evidence, said I was legally required to inform all third parties involved in shared assets before filing. I ended the emails with, "This is not intended to harm, only to ensure complete transparency." That alone was enough. One sponsor dropped her. The other paused the partnership. Her client base started thinning too. Some found out through whispers, others through screenshots that mysteriously ended up in a group chat she wasn't part of. The damage wasn't explosive. It was surgical, untraceable, and I was just getting started. I informed her parents, not with a rant, but with a package. I dropped it at their doorstep, photos, printed messages, a short letter. "I thought you deserved to know who your daughter has become. I say this not to shame her, but because I respected your family more than she did our marriage." Her father called me the next day. Said nothing, just breathed into the phone, then hung up. That silence said more than any apology ever could. She still thought she had options, still believed we'd talk it out. So I gave her exactly that, a dinner invitation. A calm message saying, "Let's meet." No drama, just clarity. She showed up in a soft dress, too much makeup, eyes searching for hope. I let her speak first, let her lie one last time. Then I handed her the envelope. Divorce papers. Full breakdown. Evidence. Asset split terms, brutal but clean. She flipped through the pages, hands trembling. "You already filed?" she whispered. "You already did all this?" I nodded. "Weeks ago." Her face collapsed in on itself. "Why didn't you say anything?" I looked her in the eyes. "Because I wanted you to think you still had time." It happened at the launch party for her new alignment coaching program, a carefully curated rooftop event with champagne flutes, rented greenery, LED signage, and a hand-picked crowd of influencers, wannabe executives, and self-help parrots dressed in linen and performative calm. She had rented the space 3 weeks earlier, certain she was on the brink of her breakthrough, convinced her new brand, built on buzzwords, filtered vulnerability, and a reality she didn't live was about to elevate her to some spiritual CEO plane. I let her float in that illusion. I encouraged it. I even told her I'd attend, told her I was proud of how far she'd come, watched her eyes light up with a mixture of hope and guilt she tried to hide behind fake eyelashes and a blush palette too heavy to carry what was coming. She wore white, of course. A flowing dress meant to signal purity, rebirth, grace. But as the sun dipped behind the skyline and her voice carried over the rooftop speakers, soft, trembling, pretending to be humble while talking about her journey back to herself, I stood near the back of the crowd, drink in hand, waiting. She thanked her guests, her tribe, her found family, and called out a few people by name. But not me. Never me. I had become invisible in her narrative, erased like a correction in her life story. Until I made myself seen. One of the projector screens, supposed to be rotating images from her website, flickered, then changed, then froze on a screenshot. A message. I wish I was with you instead. He doesn't touch me like you do. Her voice stopped mid-sentence. She turned, confused. Then the second screen flicked, photo of her entering a hotel with her lover. Then another, her in his lap, laughing, drink in hand. The room didn't gasp all at once. It was staggered, like dominoes falling in waves. Her audience, frozen in half-claps and fixed smiles, started whispering. The words echoed louder than the photos. Is that her? That's not her husband. Did she know this would show? She stared at the screen like it was a foreign language. Her mouth moved, but said nothing. She stepped forward, heels clicking, and tried to laugh. Okay, what the hell is this? Her voice cracked mid-laugh. Someone near the front said, that's not edited. Her smile twitched. She looked around the room for an ally, someone to save her, explain it away, join her in denial. But no one moved. I stood in the back, not hidden anymore. She found me. Our eyes locked. And that's when it happened. Her posture broke. She tried to hold her shoulders up, tried to smile again, but her hands betrayed her, trembling, clutching her dress at the waist like she could keep from unraveling. Okay, this is private, she said, suddenly angry. Whoever did this is sick. This isn't what it looks like. No one spoke. No one believed her. Her ex-best friend, Casey, crossed her arms and turned away. Her sponsor rep, the one she begged to attend, quietly slipped out the side. Then the screen switched again, an email thread, her telling the same lover, he's too weak to leave. He's afraid of being alone. I'll have his house, the car, and be free before he figures it out. The silence deepened. She turned to me now, voice louder, desperate. This is a setup. He's doing this to ruin me. You all know how he is, cold, calculated, always needing control. He never supported this. Never supported me. No one moved. No one took her side. She was spinning, unraveling, trying on different masks, first the victim, then the misunderstood woman, then the wounded goddess. But each face cracked faster than the last. You people don't know what I've been through, she said, voice rising now, eyes darting around like a hunted animal. I carried this relationship. He killed me emotionally. I needed space. I needed something real. She pointed at me now. He never touched me. Never saw me. I had to find someone who did. I didn't respond. Just stood there, still, watching. That silence hit her harder than any accusation ever could. She took a step forward, then froze. The projector changed one last time to a photo of her and me from years ago, smiling on a hike. The caption, before she decided I wasn't enough. And beneath it, a final message, actions define truth. Everything else is noise. The screens went black. The music had long stopped. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic and her shallow breathing. She stood alone now. No applause. No sympathy. Just the weight of her own choices laid bare before everyone she had ever tried to impress. She looked at me one last time, lips parted, waiting for a word, a nod, even a shred of anger she could use to play the victim. But I gave her nothing. Not a glare. Not a smile. Just presence. And that destroyed her. Because for the first time, she wasn't in control. For the first time, everyone saw her, not the image, not the brand, not the performance. Just her. Stripped. Exposed. Small. And I stood there and watched her fall, piece by piece, without lifting a finger. It was at her parents' house, of all places, that everything finally detonated. A family gathering she insisted on hosting, trying to reclaim some form of normalcy, pretending the launch party disaster never happened. She sent out messages, crafted a facade, lured everyone into one last illusion of control. Her parents were there, stiff and silent, clearly uncomfortable but not yet ready to disown her in public. My sister came too, arms crossed from the moment she stepped through the door, already reading the tension like a storm on the horizon. A few of her friends showed up, mostly out of loyalty to her mother, but you can see it in their eyes. They'd seen the screenshots, heard the whispers, and they were only here to watch the fallout. She greeted me at the door like nothing had happened. "Glad you came," she said, smiling like we were playing house again. I didn't answer. Just walked past her into the room filled with people who used to believe in us. The air was thick with avoidance, the kind of silence that pretends it's polite but is really just terrified of what comes next. Then, like a match to gasoline, her affair partner walked in. Uninvited. Awkward. Fidgeting. Clearly summoned by her in a desperate attempt to prove she had moved on, as if parading him in front of everyone would grant her dignity. He barely got 2 steps inside before all eyes landed on him, and not one of them was kind. Her father stood up but didn't speak. Her mother looked down at her glass. And that's when it snapped. "This is who you threw your life away for?" I said loud enough for every corner of the room to hear. She turned, face flushing immediately. "Don't start," she hissed, already tense. "Don't do this here." "Why not?" I asked, stepping forward. "This is exactly where it belongs, front and center, where everyone you lied to can see it." She flinched, and people began shifting uncomfortably. Her boyfriend, if he could even be called that, tried to slip out of the spotlight, but it was too late. "Go ahead," I said, locking eyes with him. "Introduce yourself. Tell her parents who you are. Tell them what you do. Or better yet, tell them what you did." "That's enough," she snapped, voice cracking, hands clenched. "You don't get to act righteous now. You were never perfect." "No," I cut in, "but I was loyal. I was there. I built a life with you, gave you trust, gave you space, gave you everything. And you took it and set it on fire because you wanted attention from someone with the emotional depth of a pothole." "Don't talk down to him," she yelled, stepping in between us. "He's more of a man than you ever were." That line silenced the room like a gunshot. Her father stood straighter. My sister stepped forward. And I laughed. Just once. A sharp, brutal sound. "Really? More of a man?" He hid like a coward while you lied to everyone who ever loved you. "He's not a man, he's your mirror. Shallow. Disposable. And just like you, he'll be gone when it stops being fun." Her voice hit a higher pitch. "I made a mistake, okay. A mistake. I was lost, and you were so cold, so distant, always analyzing, never feeling." "No," I said, eyes locked on her now. "You don't get to rewrite it. You weren't lost. You were bored. And instead of facing that like an adult, you cheated. You lied. You performed empathy while stabbing me in the back and blaming me for bleeding." She screamed then, actually screamed, a high, ugly sound that bounced off the walls. "I gave you everything. I sacrificed for you. I bent over backwards for years while you just stood there being emotionally vacant. You didn't bend for me," I said quietly, stepping closer. "You bent for everyone but me. For validation. For Instagram clout. For people you wanted to impress more than the man you married. You stopped being my wife the moment you decided being admired mattered more than being real." She burst into tears then, mascara streaking, mouth open but no words coming out. Her friend tried to step forward, stopped halfway. Her mother was crying quietly. Her father looked away like watching his daughter fall apart was too much. The affair partner turned toward the door, and I stopped him with one sentence. "You didn't win anything, man. You just inherited the wreckage." The whole room gasped at that. He left without a word. She was trembling now, hands shaking, makeup ruined, breath stuttering like a collapsing wall. "You're cruel," she whispered. "You're so much worse than I ever thought." "No," I said, stepping back toward the door. "I'm just finished pretending you're someone you're not." And I walked out, leaving her in the ruins of her own design, surrounded by the people who once clapped for her and now couldn't look her in the eyes. She tried to vanish after the explosion, but the echo of what she did followed her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. The sponsors were the first to go, pulled their names, deleted her posts, severed ties publicly. Her coaching business? Dead overnight. Clients ghosted her, group chats emptied, testimonials deleted. The women she called her tribe never spoke her name again. One even posted a cryptic Instagram story. Just because someone preaches healing doesn't mean they're not the reason someone else needs it. Her inbox dried up. No new bookings. No inquiries. Her calendar turned blank. Then her job called. Her part-time contract work for a mental wellness firm. They said they'd received anonymous reports, screenshots, allegations, receipts. They didn't say it was me. They didn't need to. Your personal choices are affecting our brand. They said, we have to cut ties. Fired. Done. No public announcement. Just erased. Her parents stopped picking up her calls after the family dinner. Her mother sent one text. We raised you better. That was the last message she got. Her father said nothing. When she tried to visit, her mother refused to open the door. Friends, blocked. Followers, gone. Online, she was a ghost no one acknowledged. In real life, the silence was worse. People in town walked past her like she didn't exist. No hellos. No pity. Just sideways glances and uncomfortable silence. She moved within 2 weeks. Packed what she could into her rusted Civic, the same car she once mocked for not being executive enough, and drove to a small city where no one knew her name. Took a job at a strip mall spa, answering phones for a massage chain. Minimum wage. No benefits. Her coworkers didn't know who she used to pretend to be. She didn't tell them. Her fake life was gone. Her real one had nowhere left to hide. As for the affair partner, he disappeared within 48 hours of the party. Deleted their chats. Blocked her number. Told a mutual friend he never signed up for that kind of drama. His silence hit her harder than my words ever did. She tried to post again once, some cryptic caption about rising from ashes. It got 6 likes. One comment. You're not rising. You're rotting. She never posted again. Then came the messages. Long ones. Sobs typed into text. I miss you. I think about us every day. I was so stupid. I ruined everything. Can we just talk? You were my home. I didn't know until I lost it. I didn't respond. Then shorter messages followed. Please. Just one chance. I still love you. I replied once. Just once. Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore. She stopped messaging after that. But not for long. One rainy afternoon, she showed up at my door. No umbrella. No coat. Just her, soaked and shivering, with that same cracked mascara running down her cheeks like the last time I saw her fall apart. She looked older. Smaller. Voice hoarse from rehearsing apologies I never asked for. I don't want anything, she whispered. I need you to know how sorry I am. I was selfish. I was blind. And you were the best thing I ever had. I didn't say a word. She took a shaky breath. You were good. And I broke that. I know. I see it now. Every night. I would give anything just to go back. I'd undo it all. I'd trade every second I had with him just to feel safe with you again. I let the silence build. I wanted her to feel every second of it. The weight of being heard and not forgiven. Finally, she asked the question that every cheater eventually does when there's nothing left. Is there any part of you that still loves me? I looked her in the eyes, calm and clear. No, I said. There's not even a part of me that remembers loving you. She crumbled then. Knees buckled. Tears fell without grace. I closed the door before her hands touched the frame. Watched her through the peephole as she stood there, broken by her own undoing. Eventually, she left. No screaming. No final plea. Just the sound of wet footsteps fading down the driveway she used to call home. And I stood there, not with pride, not with vengeance, but with peace. Because I didn't destroy her. She did that herself. I just refused to stop her. Now she walks alone in a world that no longer believes in her. And I walk forward, clean, whole, and free. She once said I'd never survive without her. Funny, I never really lived until she was gone. What would you have done if it was your wife?